So thanks,
All right.
everybody. Welcome to today's ETRO about prefabrication. A quick note on this one that Travis, Kristof, and Alain all attended a conference. So part of this is driven by that conference attendance and what they learned there. And going forward, we do require anybody who ETRO sends to a conference to write a white paper about their experience. And if applicable, you'll do an ETRO as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kristof and the team and have fun.
Thank you, Karina. Yeah, just starting off today's ETRO with what's going on with Prefab. And as to myself, I'm Kristof Hebel, manager of Prefab. I got with me Alain, who was the manager of field operations, and Travis, who is the manager of Precon. I'm just going a little over the learning objectives that we have laid out for you guys today. So we got in part one, we got Prefab in the industry. Part two, Prefab at ETRO. Moving forward, what does the industry do in general? And conclusion, call to action, and a little Q&A at the end. So Prefab in the industry. So starting everything, what is the actual state of prefabrication in industry? So we noticing an adaptation growing in North America and globally. Drivers for the adaptation to more prefab are cost, competitiveness, quality, safety, sustainability, and labor shortages. As to application for prefabrication, so there are many industries that are already doing prefab for a longer time, which you're probably familiar with in a different way. For example, window and doors, cabinetry, and facades. For us at ETRO, our targets are interior wall panelization, knockdown kits, mainly for washrooms, balconies, as our Bolton balcony project, and multi-trade racks. And then I hand over to Alain.
Hello, everyone. So as Kristof mentioned, my name is Alain MacNair. I'm your field operations manager, and my role is largely to help support and provide guidance for prefabrication efforts throughout the company, also helping out really connect the field to the pre-construction activities and closing the loop there and sharing lessons learned. Speaking of lessons learned, one of the things that we've done is the three of us attended a conference last February, just after Kristof started in Phoenix, Arizona, where we got to learn from some of the leading experts in prefabrication in North America. We're also joined with a couple of our trade partners, two people from Tino Mechanical. Some of the main takeaways from the conference, actually three of them, was that to implement prefab successfully, we really need to start driving change at all levels throughout the industry. So that means changing the way that building codes are put together, changing the perception of prefabrication with authorities having jurisdiction, working with consultants to really design for manufacturing and design for industry of our projects that we build, so that they can really facilitate the use of prefabricated elements. ETRO as a general contractor is another takeaway. We're really well positioned to help remove some of the roadblocks and the constraints that are in the industry that are kind of hindering the advancement of prefabrication efforts. And often when we talk to subcontractors about doing prefabrication, they don't have the space. It's hard to coordinate with other contractors, and we're really well positioned to remove those barriers. And we're actively doing this right now on a few projects, which we're going to have some more examples from Kristof and Travis on later on. And as a third takeaway, we walked away from the conference with this understanding that although there's a lot of leaders in the industry throughout North America, especially in the United States, doing prefabrication, ETRO is really well positioned to be a leader, the leader in Western Canada when it comes to prefabrication efforts. And we're going to share with you what that roadmap looks like today.
Perfect. Thanks, Alain. So going a little bit over some key principles for prefab and success. So there's a simple illustration of showing the differences between conventional construction, which most of us are most familiar with. So essentially raw materials being shipped to site and processed at site. So that happens between all trades at the same time, which means it's a very congested environment. As to if we would look to a DFMA approach or with prefab principles implemented, we would send the raw materials into a designated factory for each of the trades, producing the components and ship them on a tight schedule to site, and we only need to focus on the installation component of it. That being said, with prefab, there always goes VDC, so essentially if no BIM VDC is done, there will be no prefab. So we need some clear documentations to support the prefab. And along with that, we want to strengthen a simplified construction to make everybody's life a little more efficient. And with efficiency, there comes standardizations. So with prefab, the ideal aim is to have an 80-20 rule set for 80% standardized components versus 20% customized, which would be considered the conventional construction methods. With prefab, there's also inherent challenges that come with it, but also opportunities. So prefabrication is not new to the market or to the industry. It's been widely studied and researched. So to each perspective of conventional construction, they looked at a solution for prefab, but at the same time, they also want to understand what are challenges that come with prefab and where do I plug in a solution. So this is like a broad picture of how a matrix can look like. And if we consider prefab, it would always start from a scalable approach that you use your raw materials and simple as just cutting them to length offsite and send a pre-cut kit to site. And then from that, you would grow in pre-made components, just as wall panels, etc. And from that, you would grow further into volumetric. And the end goal would be an entire building that is essentially prefabricated to a very high degree. What we're trying to mitigate with that is trade skepticism and cultural resistance. So that is mainly a main challenge that happens on the field as well as in the office, because everybody is hesitant to change, which is very understandable. Solutions to that is treat trades as customers and show benefits that come and emerge out of prefab. And there's two talking points that Travis will speak about.
Sure. And for those that don't know me, Travis Feldmann, Pre-Construction Manager. So as far as the last two items, lead time and then design freezes. So again, Alain mentioned it earlier as far as ETRO's unique position in regards to being able to enable prefab through our process. So with us being engaged in pre-con so early on in the design process, we have the ability to shape what we could do as far as the prefab process, meaning design assist trades, making sure that we're targeting early tenders for select elements of the project, whether or not it be prefabricated exterior wall components, prefabricated wet walls like we're executing at 837 BD, or some components that we're going to be speaking about a little later as far as what our roadmap looks like. But again, utilizing that time up front to bring in the trade partners that we need, the consultants as far as changing that mindset, if you will, or how the documents are developed, and making sure those design considerations are front loaded in that design process. So take washrooms, for example. It's making sure that the layout and space of the washroom is consistent. It's making sure that we can figure out a repeatable process or size of those elements to align with what we want to do with offsite construction. And then the design freeze, again, making sure those finish selections, if they're going to impact integration within that prefab element, making sure that we're forecasting that into the award process and making those selections earlier, but allowing that 80-20 rule where everything's not looking cookie cutter.
Amazing. Thanks, Travis. All right, so prefab at ETRO. Just going to walk you through a few pilot projects that we have launched and already working on it to almost completing them.
Excellent. Thanks for the introduction, Kristof. And so prefab at ETRO is not something that's new, although we are looking to really step up our game, and with Kristof joining us, really leveling up our efforts. But the TOPE program is something that was started at ETRO, or like early concept, back in 2021 with Allison and the team at the Anhart project. They saw some of the challenges that many of you probably experience on job sites today when it comes to door hardware. So things go missing, people are walking all over the building, you know, back to one room, down to the hardware room, back to the room, back and forth, a bunch of wasted time. And often what ends up happening towards the end of a project is that we're missing some critical components. We start to see some schedule impacts, and sometimes things are missing that are going to impact occupancy. You know, you can think a lot of exit doors, that kind of thing. If you're missing these components and you're finding out last minute, there's a good chance that that's going to impact our schedule. And so what the team started to see is that we've got this opportunity to identify, the quantities that we need by floor, by room. And we got down to this TOPE program where now we're delivering things, not just in time, but where they're needed as well, so that the people that are installing door hardware have exactly what they need, exactly where they need it. And some of the other advantages that we have with the TOPE program, so far at the Maplewood project, we've delivered about 30% of the hardware to site. And we've streamlined the schedule when it comes to installation. And one of the things that drove that was that we identified a huge amount of issues with the door hardware schedule in terms of quantities and doors to be installed. There was a bunch of errors on the front end, and we were able to capture that, months before the hardware was actually required on site, corrected those issues on the counts. And when the totes were delivered to the project, they had exactly the right quantity. Through that process of implementing the TOPE program at Maplewood, one of the things that we learned, and you're going to hear about more later, is that ensuring that we're buying out with our subcontractors and including in our tendering process things like the TOPE program or prefabrication is critical to making it work. The team's gotten buy-in from our partners there, Murcroft and Almar, to participate in the program. But one of our lessons learned is that it would have been much easier to coordinate on the front end, buy out the trades, have a plan going in, and that would have helped things out quite a bit. And Kristof's going to take back over, tell you about some more of our current prefab efforts.
Thank you, Alain. So the next case study that is ongoing right now are the washroom wall panels for 837BD. So we took the prefabrication process all the way from the beginning, supplying coordination drawings, thanks to VDC, supplying and developing those, into the process of actually framing the panels, lay them out in the grid as they were deployed on site, to slowly integrating the plumb work to a point where we can actually QC and visually see how the wall panels are compositioned of the components. And then later on, we were taking them down, stacking them, and reinforcing them to get some structural integrity that was required by the structural engineer for the vertical lift. But what did we gain out of this? So we gained a reduced amount of rework. So there was rework, yes, but it was on a much smaller scale than it would have occurred conventionally. We eliminated the impact of congested sites. So yesterday, which you see in the next slide, we delivered the first panels to level 1 or the ground level. And we created a predictable output. So with creating the upfront documentation, we knew exactly what we should be expecting as the output. Instead of running floor by floor and chasing materials, we had everything centralized around our workstation. So it was easy to handle materials into their places, pre-cutting them, and sort through the materials that are required for the panels. So on this slide now, we see the progression from the engineering drawings, which are gotten stamped by now, to a test lift, to the actual loading of the truck and the delivery to site. So that happened, the delivery to site happened yesterday, the test lifting happened a few weeks ago. So the only missing piece of this project really is to install the panels and ship the remaining pieces. There will be a scheduled lessons learned for sometime in November, but keep an eye on your inbox for the email once it comes out. Okay, then Travis will speak a little more about future projects.
Yeah, so first and foremost, shout out to Karina, Strategic Initiatives Manager, on all the stuff that's going on prefab-wise in the background and all the programs that we have running simultaneously. So top left is our prefabricated corridor cassettes. Think of this as identifying the congested areas on site, whether it be horizontal or vertical, and then allowing that time for integration within a BIM environment for maintenance, for operations staff to get at a valve that they need to be able to shut off, allowing all that work to happen up front, but also, again, allow us to take the congested areas off the critical path of the construction schedule. Next is the bottom right image, which is our DASH program with BC Housing. So we got awarded a $250,000 grant to assist with designing and a knockdown component washroom. So think of this as similar to 837BD, but enveloping all the walls, plus a prefabricated ceiling cassette, integrating sprinklers, ceiling fan, light fixture, everything like that. So you're standing up the more complicated aspects of a construction site in a quicker amount of time, specifically focusing on wood frame projects right now. I know the image is more representative of steel stud, but again, you can take this and mirror it into the kitchen layouts as well. So thinking big picture, all these things can be productized if you want, to have some tweaks, again, following that 80-20 rule. We know what carriers we need. We know what elements need to go in for backing, but it's shifting where those locations are and offering as a product that's built off-site, delivered on-site just in time, and then it's solving a lot of that coordination issue that we're doing. Then the bolt-on balconies. So again, this is something that we're targeting for our multifamily res projects. We've engaged Ron Hart Architects plus some other consultants with the process being completed by February 2026. This would take into account, hopefully, construction and concrete construction and wood frame construction, as well as things like Brightside with outsolation packages. So all those different kind of connection details, depending on the envelope you're attaching to, as well as water mitigation strategies, or how water flows through this assembly as far as bolting it on. And the last image, top right, is more along the lines of prefabrication doesn't have to be a big lift. It's starting small, it's getting people involved. Again, what Kristof said about talking prefab early and always, it's that aspect. So this is just a simple shower diverter valve, pre-plumbed. You got your water line in, you got your shower head spigot out of the wall, if you will, and your diverter valve connected. So just taking that work off-site, finding those components that are repeatable and there's a good scale of them, and executing it properly. And then something that's further looking, but utilizes something that you guys know, is Site Blitz, but thinking of it from, and I think that the tie-in between the shower diverter valves and Site Blitz is something that I see being a product, allowing this to eventually open up to other GCs, other general contractors, the single-family house building community, townhouse. You can productize something like that, and then with Site Blitz, allow for a group of people to start delivering these products to others that may need it, to just, again, advance that conversation and build that holistic community of prefab. So that's what's going on.
So where do we move forward from here? All right, so I'll scoop up the points 4 to 6 and Travis takes on the other ones. So build business cases to analyze efficiency. So that's really what we earlier discussed with the TOE program, with the 837BD washroom walls, and also now our mock-up for the bolt-on balcony, and also our DASH program project that we have. So we really need to look into these projects to identify, okay, what can we do better, what worked well, what didn't go so well, to understand the next progression of it, the next iteration, because it's a continuous improvement process. And developing supply chains for the prefab. So that really means prefab eventually will scale up to a much larger quantity, and we need to establish supply chains that can support that demand. So that means reaching out to trade partners, reaching out to manufacturers, suppliers, to build these early on connections to ensure them there will be a larger quantity sometime down the future, once we dialed in our processes and our products for several projects. And of course, ensure adaptation of standards and readability. So we want to take conventional construction to a more streamlined, repeated process, just like someone builds cabinetry, windows, and doors. We want to initiate that through other trades, that they eventually come to us and have ideas of prefabbing certain components that we haven't even thought of. So that would be an ideal goal, that we would be driven by the trades at some point, that we would have a better collaboration on the prefab. And I just have to show this the other ones.
Yeah, and I think to echo points that I made earlier, as far as the GC being the orchestrator to this process, like we have huge influence on integrating prefab and what we're doing with all the programs that we're executing on current construction sites, as well as all the stuff that we've got from current strategic initiatives. We're positioned well to change the way people are thinking and making sure that we're having those conversations early. I think that's really what it boils down to, is making sure that we're talking prefab and figuring out ideas as a team early on how we can implement it into the specific projects, as well as making sure that, you know, if we're not doing prefab on a site right now, still having those conversations and being like, you know, is there a way to do this better with prefab the next time that it happens?
All right. What are the long-term strategies for ETRO? So we're looking to build an ETRO library of standardized components, which then will be lended out or given to architects and trades to be used in their drawings. So it will be easier process from procurement to manufacturing to design freezes. So all that will be earlier on be addressed as to having these things to figure out down the road. So this, again, like mentioned before, this only goes when VDC and prefab go hand in hand together with all other departments. And strengthening prefab-focused supply chains, again, we need to understand where we want to be in the future to tell the story to everybody involved, that they understand there will be a process and a future of scalability, and it will not just end with one mock-up piece or just a few bathroom walls. It will scale with the project size. And integrate prefabrication as a core competency. So essentially make prefab the way how we work, not just what we do. If we project that out, then people will jump onto the same train and, you know, advocate for the same purpose. And position ourselves as ETRO as a leader in prefab, which will bring other people's curiosity onto it and ask us the questions, how did we get there? How did we do things? So if we lead those conversations, others will follow. And of course, future-proof how we build. There is always a different future, and we need to anticipate it and adapt to it to make sure we have the right measures for that. And implement technologies for prefab that can be digitizing our documentation process, our communication processes, even further automate and connect to the full project lifecycle. And leading the shift towards construction industrialization. So that is really the manufacturing part of it, where we jump from a mock-up unit to like a serial production piece of hardware or solution that has been produced over and over again, applied on different job sites that you would see popping up over time. So now I'd like to take a look at what the industry does. So here are a few unique examples that you would not come across every day of what's happening in the industry. So we have prefabricated MEP skids that are not sitting on a welded frame, but rather on a bolt-on system, just to eliminate the factor of welding. This is the top left, and right next to it, these are rebar carpets. So instead of tying rebars manually by hand, you would roll out the carpet and you gain efficiency for your pouring sequence. And then you have mass timber flooring cassettes with servicing already integrated, and or precasted facade modules of like 3D or compound angled aesthetic components, the Flint speed wall or the Kalensikov modular construction. So who are these rock stars that build these things? So on the wooden side, there's a much larger group of companies. They do prefab. I welcome everybody to check out the website because there were just too many to list here. But on our projects, we have a few of these rock stars already working with us. We have Blackcomb on 837BD. We got Stowe working hopefully with Aritzia on our Aritzia project. So these are a panelized manufacturer out on the East Coast. We got Tino on Maplewood and several other projects, and we got Excelsior on BC Place. Like I always say before, like without VDC and digital planning, there won't be any prefab or precise construction. And just jumping to our conclusions and call to actions. I'm going to share the slide with Alain.
All right, thank you. So we're working on some cool stuff. You might be thinking to yourself now, like, what can I do? How can I help? Well, the good news is that we really do need everybody's help at every level of the organization to drive prefabrication efforts and make it successful. As you know, Kristof and Travis have shared, you know, there was a couple of tips there. But for the pre-construction people on the call and in the room, we're really looking to you to think about prefab efforts early on in the project, identify opportunities. Kristof's here to help, but he can't pick up everything on his own. So we're looking for you to look and find those opportunities. For the estimators on the call, we're looking to make sure that when we, you know, do bid leveling and get into the buyout for projects, and you start working with our project managers on that, that we're taking prefab, you know, into the contracts, making sure that the language in the contracts and during the buyout process is robust to really help us and the construction teams pull off prefab efforts. And for everybody on the call that's part of the project delivery teams, the PMs, the superintendents, PCs, assistants, supers, we're looking for your input and feedback on, you know, when we start a prefab effort on a project and buy it out and everything's going great, like, how does it work in practice? What are the challenges that you're encountering, and what do we need to learn next time so that we can, you know, build that into the strategy going into future projects, and really sharing those lessons learned. We're also looking for you to identify opportunities for something that we didn't prefab that maybe we could have, and sharing that in your projects lessons learned. Speaking of lessons learned, something that we can do as an organization that everybody can be a part of is really driving and leveraging our VDC team to help with prefabrication efforts. As Kristof mentioned, you can't really plan a project to this level of detail that's required without the help of the VDC team. So they're instrumental in making this happen. And all of this can be supported with our lean and last planner system efforts. You know, it takes a lot of pre-planning. So things like poll plans are a great opportunity to really ensure that we're, you know, planning for prefabrication efforts, that we're looking ahead. You know, things like the TOPE program. It takes, you know, continuous adaptation to, is the site ready or not, having those conversations during our weekly work plans, and really integrating it into, again, the ETRO way, making it what we do every day. So we're counting on you to help us out, learn and grow everything prefab.
And some of these actions can look like, in a way, host an ETRO. So we got it already checked off our bucket list. For operations, we would be looking to expand on the lean processes and continuous improvements. With prefab, those essentially go hand in hand. You don't want to stop where you finish the last project. You want to deliver the next one even better, even leaner, and better improved. For estimating and pre-con, we could be looking at establishing a trade directory that lists between all the trades who is only focused on conventional and who is focused on both conventional and prefab construction, and build a database that compares over time the cost between conventionally built buildings and buildings that are to 50% degree built prefab conventionally, or even more than that, just to get that correlation going. And from my side on the prefab, continuing with internal and external workshops, education and awareness purposes, and active involvement with the overlapping department. And like Alain mentioned, always ask yourself, how can we implement prefab? What do we need to do? Who do we need to speak to? And just to conclude from here on and take some key takeaways. So with prefab, we all understand now that prefabrication is reshaping the construction industry. We want to slowly and gradually fade out conventional construction, but not to 0.0. ETRO is positioned itself as a leader for innovation in that space. And next steps will be scale initiatives, like going from a mock-up to full-scale production, integrate digital workflows, so deepen the relationship BDC to projects to prefab, and strengthen partnerships to support supply chains. Create a sustainable framework for prefab. There's a good example to that. Just recently with the 837BD washroom wall panels, we provided the space to help trades perform the prefab because most lacking proper warehouse space or open areas to do prefab. So these possibilities are there to help willing trades to do prefab. We can just invite them to our space. As Travis mentioned, discuss prefab at every level early on with ownership, subtrade, and suppliers. And keep prefab always in the back of your mind and actively in your conversations. And we are keeping continue with educational pieces internally and externally. And as you saw, prefab is really happening as we speak. And I'd like to conclude and throw it out to Q&A. I know I'm exceeding the time a little bit, but if there's any questions, please feel free to ask.
For the live audience, shout out to you guys.
What are we doing for space? That ties into how and when are we going to start to scale. So right now, everything is still at the pilot project mock-up stage, but let's say that could turn into something more serious 3 to 5 years down the road. It all depends how most parties will jump on the same concept. It's just so much one can drive, but if all drive together, that will definitely scale and determine, like, what about space? What about who would be doing what at a bigger scale? Yeah. So further down in the future, hopefully, yes.
Right now, we have about 10,000 square feet available to us for that collaboration. It's shared with Tino as far as that, but yeah. So, and then there's a second warehouse that's being evaluated.
Yeah. There's potential expansion room. We've got like overhead gantry cranes, and would be able to take on like much larger prefab. It's just dependent on opportunities. And right now, like the space that Travis was talking about, it's all at 1050 boundary. Yes.
Anything from the online crew?
All right. Thank you.